Sarada has revealed her left eye Mangekyo Sharingan ability, and it's Genjutsu. Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen, Sarada is following in the footsteps of her long-lost uncle, channeling a black flame ability from her right eye and a Genjutsu ability from her left. But I know right now some of you are thinking, wait, hold up. Sarada hasn't revealed anything even remotely close to a Genjutsu ability yet. So where are you getting this idea that her left Mangekyo Sharingan holds on to a Genjutsu similar to that of Sukuyomi? Well, it was all revealed in chapter 26 of Two Blue Vortex. You just gotta know where to look. And fortunately, I know where to look. See, because while chapter 26 might have seemed like a bore to a lot of you, and it seemingly ended with a cliffhanger that put Sarada on the ropes, I believe it's actually Daemon who's on the ropes. And I have evidence to back up that claim. And thus today I'm going to be doing exactly that, because today we're talking Sarada's MS Genjutsu revealed. But before we get to revealing anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, that's the wrong side, subscribe to the channel and hit that noti bell. And if you're looking for one additional NC Hammer 23 video every single week, you can find my Naruto reaction series using the fourth wall link in my description below. We're on to the one-on-one fights. And considering the fact that I just had to adopt a homeless dog and her 8 puppies, I'd appreciate if you signed up for that fourth wall, because they're insanely expensive.
Oh, Nick, just give them to a shelter.
We literally called every single shelter in LA. None of them would take them, so I have 7 more of these things. So, if we're being real with ourselves, chapter 26 of Two Blue Vortex was kind of a bore. It was largely dedicated to the establishment of Inajin joining Team Boruto and the Fire Daimyo's prosecution of Boruto through possibly Konohamaru and Shikamaru. It was a setup chapter largely focused on the politics of current-day Boruto. However, at the end of the chapter, rather confoundingly, after more talk from Sarada and Sumire about their feelings for Boruto, we were given an all-time cliffhanger. See, after Ada was able to deduce that both Sarada and Sumire are not affected by her charm Genjutsu at all, on account of the fact that they were able to talk about liking somebody else in front of her, Daemon jumps into action and attacks Sarada and Sumire. Because if they're not affected by Ada's charm Genjutsu, then technically they pose a threat to Ada, as it is Ada's charm Genjutsu that stops anybody from being able to injure her, anybody Otsutsuki excluded. And while Sarada does activate her MS the second she sees Daemon beginning to leave the wall that he was leaning against during this conversation, Daemon flies behind Sarada and Sumire, seemingly before either of them is able to do anything. And honestly, this tracks, because not only is Daemon a cyborg and therefore ridiculously powerful, but he also has access to a Shinjutsu, the Reflection Jutsu, which makes it not only literally impossible to attack him, but also impossible to literally have any intent to attack him. And therefore the idea that somehow, someway, Daemon was able to speed blitz Sarada, get behind her, and grab her by the back of the neck, telling her that her MS is useless if she's dead before she gets the chance to use it, the chapter ends in such a way that makes you believe that chapter 27, our next chapter, is going to feature a fight between Sarada, Sumire, and Daemon that is not opening well for Sarada and Sumire. However, what if Daemon was incorrect in his assessment that Sarada hadn't gotten a chance to use her Genjutsu? And what if, in actuality, chapter 27 opens with Daemon realizing that he's been placed under Genjutsu? See, the best frame of reference we have for Sarada using her Mangekyo Sharingan is in chapter 21, when she undergoes her Mangekyo Sharingan reawakening. Now in this chapter, Sarada realizes that her own emotions have been holding her back, and thus she reawakens her Mangekyo Sharingan ability, an ability that she'd been repressing, as it had been 22 chapters since she activated this Mangekyo Sharingan in any capacity. And in this Mangekyo Sharingan reawakening, we saw Sarada use with her right eye a devastating black flame attack known as Ohirame, another name for Amaterasu. And with Ohirame, Sarada was able to make a multitude of black balls of fire, operated as individual gravity wells that Sarada could selectively pull things into. And with Ohirame, Sarada was able to not only nullify the Iron Sand ability of Ryu, sucking his Iron Sand into her gravity wells, but also she was able to use this technique to annihilate Ryu, choosing him as one of the things selectively sucked into one of these gravity wells. With such force, mind you, that a Shinju was unable to pull himself out, devastating him with such gravity that, much like Boruto using his Rasengan Uzuhiko against Hidari, every part of Ryu was erased, minus his soul door. Now, this entire chapter, chapter 21, Ikimoto pays particular attention to Sarada's right eye. Whether it's a side profile shot of Sarada's face only showing the right side of her face, a faraway shot of Sarada's entire body with the right side of her body facing us, or just a solo shot of Sarada's right eye, every time we see Sarada in chapter 21, we are focused on her right eye. Now, this is important for a couple of different reasons. One, because in that very same chapter, it's eventually revealed that Ohirame is channeled through Sarada's right eye, by her right eye beginning to bleed when Sarada reaches the apex of her power in her battle against Ryu, and B, because in chapter 26, Ikimoto begins to do something very similar to how he paid only attention to Sarada's right eye in chapter 21, but instead with Sarada's left eye. And this all harkens back to how Itachi was treated in Naruto's manga, both stylistically and based off the fact that Itachi's Amaterasu was channeled through his right eye, similar to how Sarada's Amaterasu-derived jutsu Ohirame is channeled through her right eye. But that means after the conclusion of chapter 21, it is verifiably truthful to say that we've only seen half of Sarada's Mangekyo Sharingan abilities, specifically the Mangekyo Sharingan abilities that belong to her right eye. And while theories have ranged about what her left eye Mangekyo Sharingan abilities would be, all the way from a golden Amaterasu flame that doesn't burn the people that are hit by it but rather heals them, to a Genjutsu that's able to battle against omnipotence by forcing the person placed under this Genjutsu to see the world in the exact same way that Sarada does. Essentially a brainwashing Genjutsu that allows for Sarada to bring people over to her side by forcing them to share her worldview. However, it might be way simpler than even all that. See, Sarada's left eye Mangekyo Sharingan ability could simply be a high-level Genjutsu, and there's a fair amount of evidence to back up that exact idea. See, like we've already talked about in this video, there is a fair amount of evidence to back up the idea that Sarada is actively being written as an Itachi-esque character, stuck between her allegiance for her village and her allegiance for her loved ones, Sasuke and Boruto. Kind of like how Itachi was stuck between his allegiance for his village and the Uchiha clan. On top of this, Sarada, much like Itachi, is acting as a spy for one of these parties against the other. However, unlike Itachi, she is technically acting as a spy against Konoha, feeding Boruto, and I guess indirectly through Boruto to Sasuke, information about what's going on inside of Konoha. And while many inside of Konoha would probably say what Sarada is doing right now is an act of open treason, she's doing what she believes is best for Konoha, and best for the people that she loves, Sasuke and Boruto. Very similar to how Itachi was forced into a terrible situation by Danzo, where he was forced into killing the entire Uchiha clan by Danzo for what he believed was the betterment of Konoha as a village. Even in design, Sarada is actively being compared to Itachi, as she, like Itachi, wears a necklace with metal rings on it, and a black and red coat, which is an obvious callback to an Akatsuki robe. Black on the outside, red on the inside. But the most damning piece of evidence that proves that Sarada is trying to be written as an Itachi-esque character is the fact that Ohirame, which is well known to be an Amaterasu-derived jutsu, is channeled through Sarada's right eye. And while Sarada's father Sasuke does have Amaterasu, his Amaterasu is channeled through his left eye, with his left eye ability being Kagetsuchi, the ability that allows him to control how his flames move. And now, well, technically Sasuke has lost his Amaterasu eye, he's been able to switch where Amaterasu fires from for some particular reason, so technically he does use Amaterasu from the same eye that Sarada uses Amaterasu from now. Before he lost his eye, Sarada technically used her Amaterasu ability from the same eye as Itachi, not Sasuke. But if all lines around Sarada flow back to Itachi, her uncle, maybe so does her left eye Mangekyo Sharingan ability, which in Itachi was Sukuyomi, one of the most powerful Genjutsus in the entirety of the Naruto universe. A Genjutsu so powerful that its infinite version was what Kaguya and Madara were trying to use to take over the entire world. It was an infinite Kodoa Matsukame, or infinite whatever Genjutsu Obito used against Yagura. It was infinite Sukuyomi, because Sukuyomi makes you the god of the universe of the person you cast that Genjutsu on. You can either stab that person for 72 hours or live an entire life with them that spans 80 years. Or you can use the infinite version of Sukuyomi to give a personal version of heaven to every single person on Earth. So what if, just like how Ohirame is a derivative of Amaterasu and it's channeled through Sarada's right eye, like how Amaterasu is channeled through Itachi's right eye, Sarada's left eye contains a jutsu that is a derivative of Sukuyomi. I mean, multiple times on this channel, we've talked about the possibility that Sarada is actually going to awaken to Itachi's Susanoo spiritual weapons, like the Yata Mirror and the Sword of Totsuka, because because the Mangekyo Sharingan abilities of an individual are derived from their personality and wants in the moment they awaken their Mangekyo Sharingan. And both Itachi and Sarada had eerily similar Mangekyo Sharingan awakenings, with Itachi awakening his Mangekyo Sharingan after finishing off Shisui, his best friend, Sarada awakening her Mangekyo Sharingan while pleading with Sasuke to save her love interest and possibly at that moment best friend Boruto. Now, if Sarada's left eye Mangekyo Sharingan ability is a derivative of Sukuyomi, that would be massively helpful very quickly. See, the idea that Daemon effortlessly gets the jump on Sarada, who's trying to be established as one of the more powerful characters in Boruto, just doesn't sit right with me, especially when she was able to activate her Mangekyo Sharingan before Daemon was able to close the distance. You're telling me the girl who was able to take out Ryu, one of the Shinju, and therefore one of the biggest threats on Earth in a somewhat effortless battle, was speed blitzed by Daemon? Listen, I get it. Daemon needs to be established as a world-ending threat, and he is. However, it just feels like a weird writing choice to immediately, after making Sarada seem like an incredible badass, have her get absolutely trounced by a 12-year-old. I understand that Sarada's key concern and therefore primary antagonist is not Daemon, it's Hidari. And maybe Daemon is stronger than Hidari. But if we're trying to be better than our predecessor, Kishimoto, when it comes to writing women to be important and powerful characters in the story, having a battle between Sarada and Daemon simply include her activating her Mangekyo Sharingan and then getting speed blitzed isn't the best look. Especially if we want to try to establish the narrative that Hidari is a big threat. Because if Sarada is able to defeat Hidari, but can't raise a singular finger in combat against Daemon, that kind of makes the Shinju look like punks. Which is why I believe that this fight, which appears to be over already, actually has barely begun. See, if Sarada was to awaken some kind of Sukuyomi-esque Genjutsu ability in her left eye, that would be incredibly useful in combat against Daemon, because we have no idea as to whether or not a Genjutsu can be reflected by Daemon's reflection Shinjutsu. See, we understand that Daemon, like a lot of the other cyborgs, has access to a Shinjutsu, a unique individual and ridiculously powerful jutsu that all of the ninjutsu, genjutsu, and taijutsu on Earth are technically derived from. And Daemon's flavor of Shinjutsu is the reflection jutsu, a technique that allows him to reflect not only physical attacks but also ninjutsu attacks and other Shinjutsu attacks like the claw marks. But not only is Daemon able to reflect these attacks back at the attacker, but Daemon is able to reflect killing intent back at an attacker. If you think about using a sword against Daemon in battle, you will be sliced by that very same sword. So before you're even able to launch an attack against Daemon, you can have one launched back at you, making him essentially unkillable unless there's ways to get around it. And while we've talked about a myriad of different ways that you could possibly get around attacking Daemon, like breaking the building around him and having rocks fall down on him, because those rocks technically don't have any killing intent, this literally just happened in Gachiakata, possibly attacking him with no killing intent, or a bunch of other possibilities. One of the possibilities that we actually never considered was Genjutsu, which is kind of crazy because when you think about it, Genjutsu seems like the best way to get around this reflection jutsu. See, while some jutsu have been stated to be able to reflect spiritual attacks, like the Yatamir, something that we actually anticipate Sarada will inherit, by and large it's almost impossible to not only resist, but also reflect Mangekyo Sharingan-based Genjutsu. Mukai Koinada, when he came into combat against Shisui and Itachi, and was a Byakugan user which allowed him to resist Genjutsu from non-Mangekyo Sharingans, as Itachi and Shisui, two of the most competent Genjutsu users of all time, could not place him under Genjutsu using their base Sharingan, was not able to resist a Mangekyo Sharingan-based Genjutsu attack from Shisui. The Passipain, which were controlled by Nagato using chakra rods and therefore technically didn't have six senses to manipulate, and were also Rinnegan users and therefore resistant to Genjutsu, were able to be placed under Genjutsu using the demonic toad confrontation chant. Orochimaru, who's well known to have some of the best chakra control in the entirety of the Naruto universe, was able to have his living body reanimation jutsu reversed onto him not only by Sasuke but also Itachi. Kurenai, well known to be the best Genjutsu user in Konoha after the eradication of the Uchiha, had her own Genjutsu swapped onto her by Itachi. So time and time again, Sharingan, and especially Mangekyo Sharingan Genjutsu-based abilities, have been able to triumph over what we could call traditional mental durability. I mean, Deidara, after being defeated by Itachi and therefore being forced to join the Akatsuki, literally had to train one of his eyes for years to be able to be resistant to ocular-based Genjutsu. On top of this, there is a possibility that Sarada's derivative of the Sukuyomi isn't technically a malicious Genjutsu. I mean, Sukuyomi in practice isn't necessarily malicious. It allows for you to take over somebody's entire consciousness and their five senses and essentially become the god of their universe. But we've seen from Itachi, when he used Sukuyomi for his first ever time on his girlfriend in his second light novel, he was able to use Sukuyomi to give her and Itachi an entire lifetime where they were able to get old with each other and grow up in Konoha Daemon have children, giving her the life that he was about to rob her of. And therefore, Sukuyomi in practice is not necessarily malicious. It's only if you crucify the person you place his Genjutsu on and then stab them for 72 hours straight that it becomes malicious. And therefore, if hypothetically Sarada does get Sukuyomi or a Sukuyomi derivative, placing somebody under Sukuyomi, assuming Sarada doesn't maliciously torture them, would not be a move made with the intent to kill. And therefore, in this hypothetical circumstance where Sarada is using the Sukuyomi or Sukuyomi derivative against Daemon, there may be no killing intent to reflect. We know that Daemon's reflectability can activate without his input. It's a bit like Gaara's sand. Even if Daemon isn't necessarily aware that somebody's about to attack him, if they have killing intent towards him, that attack is reflected, implying that this reflection jutsu does not happen with Daemon's input. And we know on account of the fact that he can come into physical contact with other people, that so long as you're not planning on attacking Daemon, you can come into contact with him. And therefore, something that isn't defined by his reflection jutsu as malicious, hypothetically, like Sukuyomi, could possibly override that reflectability. But more important than any of this, in the same way that in chapter 21, Ikimoto paid a ton of attention to Sarada's right eye, in the exchange with Daemon in chapter 26, he pays particular attention to her left eye. And while we don't see Sarada's left eye begin to bleed, Itachi's left eye actually didn't usually bleed when he used Sukuyomi. Sukuyomi doesn't actually place as much strain on Itachi's eyes as Amaterasu. And therefore, if hypothetically Sarada did use some kind of Genjutsu on Daemon in chapter 26 at the end there, her left eye wouldn't need to be bleeding. On top of this, if her eye were to bleed at some point, probably wouldn't be until after it was revealed that she used her Genjutsu. So all this is to say that in chapter 27, I fully anticipate for there to be a big reveal of Daemon realizing that Sarada's Mangekyo Sharingan is useful because she was able to use it before she died. And I believe it'll be revealed that Daemon is actually still leaning against the wall that he believes he jumped off to grab Sarada and Sumire by the neck. Because not only does this accomplish making Sarada look better, but it's also a fantastic platform to reveal not only her left eye's Mangekyo Sharingan ability, but also her further connection to her uncle. Because while Daemon and Sarada aren't technically enemies, we are going to establish them on opposite sides of a conflict. Sarada is the one who should come out looking good, not Daemon. Daemon, while an important character to the story, is not one of the main characters of the story like Sarada. What do you guys think? Do you believe Daemon is a way bigger issue than I'm giving him credit for? Do you believe he was able to get the drop on Sarada and Sumire? Or do you believe he might be under Genjutsu? Let me know in the comments below. And while you're down there, please, I'm not gonna slap, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that noti bell. How many puppies did you count in this video? Was it 4? Because that's how many it was. Yeah, 2 of them look very similar. Actually, they all kind of look similar.